Hi guys, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Good evening if you're in the evening time zones, and welcome to Primus Learning. This is yet another video to explain to you step by step how to deploy applications to EKS using GitHub Actions. So this time around, we are using GitHub Actions and no longer Jenkins, guys. So this project is an end-to-end project that deploys code, that deploys applications to AWS EKS, that's Elastic Kubernetes Service, using GitHub Actions. I will explain to you step by step. And if you want to follow, guys, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button to get more notifications from Primus Learning. And of course, you will have lots and lots of videos that will be same thing, we'll say have the same strategy, and these will help you to build up your DevOps journey, your solutions architecting journey, and so on and so forth. So guys, hit and subscribe to our channel, and let's get after it. So this video right here is a step-by-step demo on how to deploy applications. In this case, we are deploying Node.js applications to EKS, guys. So it's a complete process. These are the steps that would follow, right? First of all, we'll have to create an EKS cluster using this command right here. So I think we'll have to first of all run this command so that as it's running, it will create the cluster, because it takes some time to create a cluster. As it's creating the cluster, I'll be explaining the code, I'll be explaining the various steps for us. And so we want to use eksctl to create an EKS cluster. This is a simple command that you can use to create a demo cluster for your project. The last time we created a project using Terraform, right? For those who did not really understand what Terraform is, you can use this command also to create your cluster. And so we'll do that. I will not explain the processes as it's running. I will rather be explaining the code and whatever we're doing here today. So the first step, if you're following this video step by step, you can do is to create this EKS cluster. And so the command I'm using is eksctl. So eksctl create. So you have to install eksctl if you don't have it. There are documentations on AWS how to do that. It's simple. So eksctl create cluster, and then the cluster name, you have to pass this -- option, and the name I'm using is Primus Learning. That's the name of my cluster, and I want to create this cluster in, I'll call it US East 2. I want to use US East 2 for this cluster right here. And then the node group name will be Linux node. So I want to use Linux nodes, and the node type will be a T2.micro. And then there are 2 nodes that I want to create, because for instance, my application will run on 2 nodes. So I want to create 2 nodes or more, depends on how heavy your application is. So guys, let's go ahead and run this command to create our EKS cluster. So I'll do that. Yeah, it didn't pick up something from up there. So EKS create, so this is it right here. I'll run that. So while it's creating, I'll explain to you what's happening in the whole thing. So we'll create the EKS cluster. That's the first step, which we are doing already. And then we'll have to create a .github folder, right? This folder right here. You see, I've created a .github folder, .github. So it's simply going into your folders and creating a folder called .github. So like going into a project, I've created a project like this, and then you simply go into that project. My Windows is kind of slow and messy, but yeah, it's the same thing as I'm showing you here. Go into that project, so create a folder, and then inside that folder, create another folder called .github. And inside the .github, create another folder called workflows, name it as is, guys. So you have to name it the way it is. Don't name it your own way. So the second step here is to create a .github folder and then create a workflow folder inside. So you're creating the workflow inside the .github folder. So let me do this, create a workflow folder inside .github folder. And so this is the second step. I've done that step already. You just have to do that, right? Just create this folder, the .github, create another one, workflows. Once you've created those, you need to create a file inside. I created my, you can name it anyway, right? I created my file called github-actions-ci.yaml. You can create the same name if you want to follow as is. So that's the next step. So the next step is to create that. I've created that already. I'll explain what's inside and so on. And then when we've done that, we'll create a secret in GitHub repo. So we'll go to settings in GitHub repo and create secrets in there. Once we've created the secrets, we will make sure our code is looking good here. You have to clone the repository. I'll post a link to this repository in the description section of the YouTube video. And you can really just get this from there and clone it up or forget or do whatever and get the code, and you can follow along, right? So do that. And once you've created the repository, cloned it on your local and uploaded your code and pushed it out, it automatically will begin running the process. It will automatically begin to run the GitHub actions. So your actions will automatically trigger once you do a push to GitHub. So I will demo that to you guys. And then after that, we'll test our application to see if it's working. And we will, of course, clean up the environment. Those are the steps we'll follow for this project, guys. And you see, we benefited as well. And we started the first step, which was creating a cluster. So the cluster is continuing to create here. So the second step was to create this github.github folder. I did that already, and create a workflows folder. So I've created that, and inside the workflows folder, please create a file. You can name the file any way you want it. So mine is called github-actions-ci.yaml. So let me explain this file to you guys so it makes sense to you. This file right here just needs a name. So you have to give this file a name, right? So I've given the file name Node.js app deploy to EKS. It can be anything, right? You can name it anything. So this is how your you define your actions, you define your workflows, right? In GitHub Actions, you define your workflow in a YAML file inside workflows. So it has to necessarily be this way. And so you've defined the name. The next thing is this on. When will this pipeline run? When is your pipeline supposed to run? So you define an on statement here, or whatever I call it. And so inside the on, you see it has to run at push when there is a push. And a push to what branch? A push to the main branch. You see, I've defined the push here, and I am telling it, hey, run when there is a push, and when there is a push to what branch? To the main branch. You could put a comma and put other branches when there's a push to other branches, so you could do that. And also let it run when there is a pull request. So maybe someone who doesn't have access to push directly to the main branch, once they do a pull request and the pull request is approved and it's merging to the main branch, then it should trigger. So this thing will automatically trigger when we are doing a push from here. That's why you will notice that once we trigger it, once we do a push to our GitHub repository, the one we will create, it will automatically begin to deploy this to this cluster that we've created. That's why you saw us creating this cluster first of all. So that's the first step. You have to necessarily define this as is, guys. All right, the next thing you see down here is the jobs. It's like your pipeline in Jenkins. It's just like you define your pipeline in Jenkins. It's the same type of file that you have in Jenkins called the pipeline, right? Or called the Jenkins file. This file is similar to your Jenkins file, guys. It's similar to your Jenkins file. It just does the same thing that your Jenkins file does, although it defines it differently. All right. So after your jobs, you have to pass this keyword here called jobs, and then the deploy under it. So look at the indentation, guys. Follow this indentation, three steps, 1, 2, 3 before you write the deploy. So what do you want to deploy? This is a name I've given it. It can be any name, right? You see, as I hover up here, it says each job must have an ID associated to it with the job. So this is like an ID I'm giving it. So it will run on what? What will this job run on? It will run on an Ubuntu latest server. So runs on is defining the type of operating system it has to run on. GitHub Actions has runners, and these runners are built on operating systems, right? And so the operating system that I want to use is Ubuntu. It has 3 types. It could run on Ubuntu, on Linux, it could run on Windows, and it could run on Mac. So that's how these are built on GitHub Actions, right? This is provided by GitHub Actions. And so what are the steps? The steps are the same thing that you define in Jenkins as stages, right? The steps are the same thing that you define in Jenkins as stages. So those who know stages in Jenkins, you should know this. All right. Once you've defined that, so you have to pass the steps, which is under the runs, same thing. You have to, give a name, right? What's the name of the first step that you want to give? I'm calling it checkout code or code checkout. And then I'm using this. I'm using what is called actions checkout version 3. This is just like those who understand Terraform. This is just like a module that you're using in Terraform. This is a built-in action. And it's an action that helps you, to check out your GitHub code so that this repository will realize that it has to go in and run the code that is available in your GitHub accounts. This is what it does. Instead of runs, you use uses here. We're using uses. We'll go down here, I'll explain the difference between run and uses. Run is when you want to pass your commands directly by yourself, and up here, uses is when you want to use a built-in function that someone else has built and put in the marketplace, right? In the GitHub marketplace. So if you look at this actions, many people use it. So it's already built in. So we can see how that is defined. So if you go to the GitHub marketplace, go to the marketplace, for instance, and just search for this, you will find it, right? You see it says actions checkout. You pull and it will bring the official one for you. So if you find that, you see git checkout extension. So let me remove this version there. Let's do that. Checkout. All right, so this is checkout. So you see, this is a module that has been built. This is the official one. You can use it. It will show you how it works, right? You see checkout, it shows you how it's used. So this is how it's used. It shows you the version. This is at version 3. This is the version 3, and it shows you how it's used. It's the same thing that we're doing here, right? The same thing we've pulled up here, and we're using the same thing. The next one is we want to install something inside this Ubuntu. And what are we installing? We want to use another module, call it, or another module or function that has been defined already called Azure setup. This is just a name that's given it. It's just a name. This is a module that is used, or a function that's used to install kubectl. So you don't want to write out the commands by yourself. You can just use it. So if you go up here to GitHub, github.com, you see github.com, and go to the marketplace, and you check on the marketplace for this, or you just do kubectl. I think you just do kubectl install or kubectl. You see there's kubectl apply, there should be install or setup kubectl. This is setup kubectl you can use. There should be an official version. So we can do set up if you know what you're looking for. So setup, you can see some of the versions that are here. You can use any version if it's official or if you feel comfortable with it. I think this one looks good. You can use this one. This one is version 1, but I don't think that's the one I used. So kubectl install. If you do install, I think that's what I searched. And it will bring different ones. So this is kubectl tool installer. This is the one I use because it's official. It has an official tag on it, right? And so you see this is the version it uses. It just installs kubectl. So this is how you use it, right? And you just pass the version of kubectl that you want to use. It's the same thing that I did here, guys. I just did that, passed the version that I want to use, and this is the version of kubectl that I want to use. It's just like installing kubectl. And then I give it an ID. You can give this ID name to be anything. Just pass an ID on it so that it uniquely identifies it. So the next thing that I passed here is AWS configuration. You're configuring your credentials. And guys, you see the same thing. You can use the configure AWS credentials function or module or whatever they call it to be able to do this, right? So I'll use that. They will show you how it's used, and this is how it's used. You simply define the AWS access key ID, and the access key ID, of course, you will need to give it a secret. We'll give the secret, we'll create secrets in GitHub, in the GitHub repository that we'll create later. And then we will also define all of this. So we'll define an access key ID and we'll define an AWS secret access key ID. So you should have your key IDs and secret access key IDs handy. And then we'll pass a region. So this is how this function right here is used, or this module, call it. I'm just calling it module, comparing it with what's happening in Terraform. For most of you understand that. And then we need to log in. This is the next step, right? These are the steps that I'm defining on my pipeline. These are the various steps or stages, you call it in Jenkins, that I'm defining on my pipeline. So when they run, I'll show you again the steps, step by step, the way I named it here. You see it appear the same way on our workflow. All right, so the next thing is we want to log into Amazon ECR because we will build an image. We'll build an image and push it out to ECR, that is Elastic Container Registry. You know, once you build an application in the form of an image, you push it out in a container registry. The container registry could be Docker Hub, it could be ECR, it could be other things, right? So the one we chose to use here is ECR. And so you have to look for the action for the workflow that has been defined, or for the function that has been defined to log into ECR. Because you have given this access already, it will figure out that, hey, it needs to use this access right here. So it will be in the same AWS account, and it will go in and log into your ECR environment. And then after that, the next step is build, tag, and publish Docker image to Amazon ECR. You see, this is the next step. You see all these steps as they work out. We'll explain them step by step as they work out when we're doing the build process. Now, so the name I'm giving this project is this. You can name it anything. The environment, you have to give it a registry, right? So on this registry, this is a keyword. This is like a variable that you're passing, right? Registry, so you're defining a registry, and the registry has the steps. You see, it has the steps, and then it has a login. So you want to take this login that this unique ID that you have up here, and then the output, you define an output, and then the registry itself. So you give the registry name, and then the repository, you pick up the repository name, and you want to tag. So you see, you are building, it will build this image, the image that is found in this repository. It will tag this image. You see, build, tag, and push Docker image to Amazon ECR. So you build, tag, and push this to Amazon ECR. And how would you build? This is the build stage, right? You build with run. You see, this time we are not using uses because we we want to run these commands ourselves. We want to run Docker build ourselves. So once we run Docker build, we want to pass the registry, which is this tag right here, right? And then the repository name, it will pick the repository name which we gave. The repository name which we intend to create is Primus Learning. So create an ECR repository called Primus Learning. So the repository name and the image tag, which is this. So this is how your image will look in AWS, right? It will look like that. So you need to build that image, and then it needs to push that image to ECR. So it needs to push to the repository, and it has to push with all this information that you've just given up here, right? So this is how you use run. So run is different from this. This, you use something that's already built, a function that's already built, like a module. Maybe somebody has built an EC2 module, right, in Terraform, and then you can just use it. It's easy. You don't need to write code out for yourself. Same thing with this. All right. So you see our cluster is ready. We're ready to go. And then the next thing down here, guys, is the name, the update kube config. So you want to go into your cluster and update the kube config, the config of your cluster. So this command right here simply helps you to be able to identify which cluster you want GitHub Actions to deploy this thing inside, to deploy the code inside, right? So the AWS EKS update kube config, and you're passing it a name so that it should go and use the cluster with this name. Don't go and use any cluster. I've created an EKS cluster. Remember, we named it Primus Learning. And so you want to go into your config, which keeps all information about your EKS clusters, and choose this context and choose this one right here to be able to deploy your stuff inside. The last step is to deploy the application to EKS. So your pipeline will be telling you deploy to EKS. So it will deploy what? It will use run again. So we are actually passing files that we have. You want to do kubectl, use the command that you remember we first of all install kubectl. So you want to use that kubectl and apply. If you know Kubernetes, you know that apply function creates your deployments. The apply here will create your service, and so on and so forth. So remember, you see there is a deployment.yaml file, there is a service.yaml file, and you of course see that there's a deployment.yaml file here and a service.yaml file. These ones are outside this GitHub workflow thing. There should not be any file inside, right? So it's just that, and then we can explain this deployment.yaml file. So this is the workflow. The GitHub-actions.ci.yaml file is just the pipeline. It's like your Jenkins file. It just defines the various steps that your workflow would use, right, to run. So that's it. That's all this workflow file is. It's a very simple file. You just define the steps, the stages, call it if you were in Jenkins, that your deployment would follow. Once you've defined that, you of course need to have a deployment.yaml file, right? Because you would do a deployment. But before that, remember I said the application we want to deploy is a Node.js application. And so the application, as a DevOps engineer, you may not be very familiar with these files. Of course, a Node.js application will have a package-log.json file, and this is the file. You don't need to understand it to deploy it. So this is the file right here, will be provided by your team that is building the application. And then you have the package.json file, and the package.json file just has the app name, it has a version of whatever you're using of Node.js, and so on and so forth, right? This is the email of the person who built this application. So I just pulled an application from somewhere and I'm using, right? I'm deploying it. I didn't build it. You don't need to know how to build it. Your team will build it, and then you simply use it to deploy. And then the server.js, this is simply the file that will, like it contains the HTML code, because this is like just a simple website that we'll be doing, right? And so it has some details in here. It has a hello from node this. It will pick up a node, the node you are running on. The node you are running on in EKS, it will pick that node up and then just tell you information about that node right here. That's all. And then you have some HTML code inside. You see some HTML code, which is defined in this function right here, get page and then message. And this is the body of the message is simply some HTML code here, which will beautify the page, make the page look good. And so this is all this file is. This is all the application is, right? So it will just display a page. And you need these three files, 1, 2, 3, to build this app. So this is your app built by your developers. You don't need to worry about this file. You don't need to worry about this file. You don't need to worry about this file. This is like the application that the application team will push out. All you need to worry about is the Docker file. They will probably push out the Docker file as well, or give you the Docker file, or you create the Docker file, and then you create your pipeline, right? So this is the Docker file right here. The Docker file simply is a file that will compile all of these things together. You compile this, you compile this, and you compile this together. So once the team has created the application, you will need to use a Docker file to build that application. You see, we are not just using an already built image like we did the last demo. We used an Nginx, which was an already built image. This one, we want to actually build this application ourselves. And this is the application right here, and we are building it, and it has 3 files, 1, 2, 3. These 3 files, this thing will combine those 3 files, build it together for you. And so what is this file? This file, the Docker file. Of course, you should know how to write a Docker file. A Docker file, simply, you have a base image. The base image that we're using here is called Alpine, right? So it's this Alpine here. So the base image we're using is Alpine, and you're asking it to create, you're asking Docker to create a directory, a working directory. The working directory will be user, source, app, and copy all these files. 1, 2, 3, copy these files. You see, that's why we see this copy dot. Copy everything. The dot here simply indicates copy everything into this file right here, into this directory that you created, right? That's how it's doing the build. And then run npm. Npm is a package manager, right? It manages a lot of packages, Node.js, and so on and so forth. So do install npm. So you do npm install by using the run command. You see where we're using the run command, right? We use the run command as well. And then expose this application that you put in that path on port 8080. You want it to run on port 8080. And then this cmd command here is just a way of starting the application once you have built it. Right, guys? So this is the way Node.js applications are built, right? How you start Node.js applications. Java would have a way to start Java applications. Python will have a way to start Python applications, and so on and so forth. So you just need to know this command. So this simply explains these other commands, right? This other files. The Docker file. So we've explained the Docker file. We've explained these files, that this is just the application. The README file is just the file I'm using to teach. So it's not anything. Forget about this one. This is a different folder. It has nothing to do with this lecture here. And so the files that are left for us to explain are just 2 more files: the deployment.yaml and the service.yaml. Some of you should already know what these do. The deployment.yaml, remember we've built, let's assume that the Docker file will build our application. All right, our application, and then this thing will deploy it to ECR. ECR is the Docker Hub environment, right, for us, ECR in AWS, the Elastic ECR, Elastic Container Registry. So it's a registry where you store images. So once this image has been built using the Docker file, you see these 4 are already explained. Once it's been built, you need to deploy it to an environment. You need to deploy it to Kubernetes. Remember, inside this file, we saw 2 files. We asked it to run 2 files. We asked it to run kubectl apply deployment.yaml, and we asked it to run kubectl apply -f service.yaml. So you need to, first of all, do the deployment. And the deployment, if you know how to write a deployment file, it just has an app version, and you provide the API version, sorry, you provide the API that you're using. The kind here, of course, is deployment. The metadata, we're just giving the metadata to be Primus learning. The replica sets that you want, the number of, if you wanted to deploy many versions, many replicas, it will deploy many, but we want just one and all that. So down here is the containers that the spec, you're providing the containers, right? You see, so the name of the container you're using is Primus Learning. The image you're using is the tag. It will pick up the image that you've put in ECR. So remember, we are still to create our container, right? We're still to create our container. And so remember, while we were writing the file down here, we said it will use we told it will use this tag name, right? This repository, this is how we'll name our repository. So while we'll be creating a repository in AWS, we'll name it that, and this is our tag name. Tag name is tag image tag, sorry, is 1.1. And so inside this deployment file, you see in your container section, if you were already built application, you would just pass the application name, the whatever is stored in GitHub. For Docker Hub. So for instance, if you're doing Nginx is found in Docker Hub, so you will not even need to pass the path. But here you have to pass your registry name. So my registry name would be this in this case, and then of course the name of the registry and the tag. And this is the tag. I just passed it here. And then image pool policy. It should always pull the policy, and the port it should expose is port 8080. So you will have a deployment once this file has been run. And how will this file be run? This is the step where the file will be run. So you apply this on EKS. What EKS? The EKS we created earlier here. Remember the command we ran at first, guys. So this is step by step. If you understand this process, you are good to go for live, guys. You are so good to go for live. All right. So this is Primus Learning again, and my name is Primus Veku, just here to help you through this process. Please click the subscribe button, share our videos, help us get exposure, because we believe that we're giving you the right content right here. All right, guys, let's continue. So remember, this is what is deploying this file, right? So it will deploy this file, and then the service, it needs a service, right? Because you need to create a load balancer from where your application will be exposed to the internet, right? So this will be the service we want to create, and the API version is v1, the kind is service, and all of that. And then you want to expose your application in port 80. And then the target port, which we defined up there, is 8080, right? That's the target port, but the port we want to use and expose in the internet is that. And the type it's supposed to create is a load balancer. So it will go in and create a load balancer in AWS and give us a DNS name that we can use to expose or to see this application in real life. All right, this is all about these files, guys. So a recap again. Remember, we have created a cluster. We have created a folder called .github. We have created another folder called workflows, and we've created a file inside the workflows. And this file inside here is compared to a Jenkins file in this video. And we're simply saying that you define your various steps, the various steps of your deployment, of your pipeline inside this file. And we're saying there is the type of application we are building here is a Node.js application, and it has some files that you need to have, 1, 2, 3, to have a Node.js application. And to package this application together, we're using Docker. So we are using Docker to build a Docker image. That's how you package that application together, right? And building a Docker image. And this is the Docker file that you use to build it. And once you've built it, you need to push it out to the EKS cluster that we created. That is called the deployment itself, right? And so you're deploying it using the deployment file, which we've explained, and you expose it to the internet using the service.yaml file. So these are all the files that we just explained. We just recapped it in a few minutes, right? And so remember, inside this file, we said we are pushing it on. We are pushing it on something. We are pushing it on when we push to a branch. So we don't have two things yet. We don't have an ECR environment, so we don't have a container registry, and we don't have a GitHub repository. Let's quickly go to AWS and create those things so that this video can go a little bit fast. Okay, so let's go to EKS, to ECR, sorry. So you log into your AWS account and go to ECR, search for ECR. And we can create a container here, leave it private, doesn't matter, and call it Primus Learning. You see, we gave it Primus Learning, just the way we gave it down there. All right, everything should look good, and just create. So we've created it, and you see, this is my account. Is the same thing that we passed here. Remember, if you go back into your deployment file, so if you go into this deployment file, this is my account. It just picks up this thing, and then the name we're creating is this. So it's just like going up here and copying this and pasting there, right? The Primus Learning, and then the tag name. The tag name is the name we gave in here. Remember the tag name, the .1.1. That's it. So we've created that, ready to go. And we created it, hopefully we created it in US East 2. Yes, that's Ohio, created in US East 2. So it will push out our image down here. Currently, there's no image here. You see, there's nothing here. Once we run our pipeline, it will push out. So that's the next step we needed to do. And then we need to go now to GitHub and create a repository, because we don't have a repository in GitHub. So let's quickly go to GitHub. So GitHub and create a repository. I have this GitHub account. I want to go to this one, to Primus Learning GitHub environment, and view organization. I want to view my organization. And inside here, I want to create a new repository. So I'll call this repository. You can create it in your private repository. So that's not a problem. Create it in your private repository. So I'll publish this. I'll make it public so that you will see the repository. And I'll give it the same name that I have here, right? The same name that I have here. So I'll just do this. I'm not renaming, I just want to copy that name. So I named mine here so that it's consistent, right? Deploy to EKS using GitHub actions. That's the way I'll name it. So I'll just give it deploy to EKS using GitHub actions. Let's make sure it has actions at the end. All right. And then make it public. You can add a README file if you want, and just create your repository. So let's create a repository. Now that you've created a repository, remember I said we needed to create secrets in this repository. You get it? You have to create secrets, and those secrets are giving access to your AWS environment. They give access to your AWS environment. This is the same type of pipeline you would do at work, guys. So you go to settings to create a secret, you go to settings, or to save your secret, you go to settings and scroll down to secrets and variables and click on it, actions. So what do you want to do? You want to store a secret. And so new repository secret. And so we want to pass the secret name right here. And we'll give it access key ID, right? AWS access key ID. Why am I selecting this one? Because if you go back to this file, if you go back to this file in here, you will see that we actually asked it to go in and search for the secret here. And that's why I copied this and I'm putting it in here, right here. That's exactly what I'm copying and putting here. So you have to pass the password. The password is the password of your IAM user that you use. So for instance, I have an IAM user in you did AWS configure to configure your CLI, right? You can use the same user. So the user I'm using now, don't worry, you see the secret key and access key, but I will delete afterward, guys. So this is just for this demo. So I will type just to get the secret because this is a Windows. So credentials. All right, so this is my access key, the access key I'm using for this. Let me just copy that and bring it in, put it here, and save. So add secret. So I've added that first secret. I want to add the second secret. Then you come back here to your file. Make sure you copy this, the AWS access secret access key. This is the variable you passed in here. It recognizes that variable, of course. So you pass the AWS secret access key, and then go copy the secret access key right here. Make sure you don't put a space. If you put a space, it will not pick it up. You pick something else. So I've copied that, and I will paste it in here. Make sure it looks good, and then I will add. And so your repository is set up, guys. Your repository secrets are set up. So you have your secret. This, you come in here, fetch your secret, and go run it out. All right. So what I want to do is, since we created this repository is still empty, we want to copy the repository, clone it to this environment. So why is my thing behaving this way? Let's do this. X out of here. Oh, hold on. Hope it's not messed up my system. All right. So just a moment while my system behaves again. Okay, so let's double click, open this up. And it looks like it's very slow here. It's very slow, taking its sweet time. So I want to go to documents, and inside documents, I want to go here and go to the project. The project is named EKS project, the whole project that I did. Start with EKS. So if I can see EKS, yeah, this is the project. Kubernetes, sorry, it's Kubernetes project. And so I just want to do this. This is the project we are inside. We're inside this project. I was explaining inside this project. I want to log in from here. So I want to do CMD from here and clone the repository here. But we already have a repository here named, deploy-to-eks using GitHub actions. And there's an old repository as well here. So let me delete this one. I want to delete this one, rename the other one. So let's do this. So this won't be a problem for you because you will not have all these files in your environment, right? So you just clone this and then just put, or just clone my code directly and just change it and push it to your environment. So I want to open this up and rename this file so that I can copy over the files from here. Because I want to clone my repository, and I already have an existing repository with the same name, and it's messing me up. So it doesn't want me to clone from there. So let me open Visual Studio Code again. And what I would do here is I will close these tabs. Yeah, save. I want to close all these tabs. Okay. Close, 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 close my tabs. Close, close. Patience with me, guys, just as I'm patient here. So I'm just closing my tabs. I have too many tabs opened. I've been doing a lot of demos and a lot of things. Save, yes. Save if whatever it is you want to save. You have to save all my documents. Save all my files. All my files. Okay, almost there. Almost there. All right, so I think it's done. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to go in here and rename it to old, but there is already an old one. So I'll delete the old one, deploy to EKS using GitHub Actions. So I want to delete this one. Yes. Delete permanently. All right. And then rename this one to old, right? Rename. So I want to rename this one to old because I want to pull down a new one, dash old. That's what I want to do, dash old. Hopefully it's renamed it. Why is it taking its sweet time? So it's taking some time to rename this. Still running. Why is it taking so much time just to rename a file, a folder, sorry. It's probably not wanting to rename. So it failed to rename. It failed to rename the file to old. And let's see if this has misbehaved and is done misbehaving. No. So that's the only thing we want to do, guys. We want to rename this thing, and it's messing us up. Our system is slow. It doesn't. It's not renaming here because this is open, right? And it's understandable. It's just that this my system is kind of wonky here. I'll need to get to work from my Mac next time. All right, so let's go to documents and go to this. The one with is Kubernetes. This is the project. And here, we want to rename this project to old. This is all we want to do right here. So you see, it's taking its sweet time and scrolling right up there because you see, if I do this, it will take time to turn around. So I think there's some issue in my system here. So guys, let me pause the video not to distract you guys with simple naming. So let me pause the video. I'll name it to old and then clone my repository here. But I'll clone the repository when we get back. So I'll just pause this. I'll just do a pause and we'll be right back after my system B as well. All right, so pause recording. So guys, welcome back. What I just did is I renamed the file. So I just renamed the file. I just renamed my GitHub repository to GitHub Actions new, right? Since I already have that one, my system is not wanting to behave well, so I'm fine with that. So what we can do therefore is to go ahead and log in here. Let's push to that new repository, but we'll first of all have to clone it down. So let me get the terminal up for us. I'm getting an integrated terminal. So we are inside, so we're inside this old one. Let's get out of here and cd into a project. And we'll call it git clone. So I want to clone that new repository. I just changed it, renamed it with -new in front of it. So I'll just pull it down. So we have a new repository here. So it should be named with -new. And I want to copy all the contents of this file into that one. So we'll copy all the files here right down to here. Okay, copy. And put in the new repository, which we called this. So we just want to paste them here, replace A. All right, so I put them in the new repository. Everything should be new here. So I want to go into my new repository. So it's named something that's new. So I want to cd into git, into deploy to EKS using GitHub actions dash new. That's what I want to cd into. So I've gone into that file. Let me just clear the space. So I've gone into that file. I want to do git status to see if there are new files in there. Yes, there are new files. So you see, want to deploy these new files into the EKS cluster. Remember I said it will occur at a push. So if we do a push, so let's do git add to add all our files. Let's do a git commit -m. The message should be GitHub actions trigger. All right, so it's added. Git push. So you see we are pushing to main. Remember we said a push to main will occur. Oh, hold on. So it should be down here. Rather. So a deployment should occur once you do a push to main. And so we want to do git push. And once you're pushing to this main branch right here, because that's the branch we're currently in. So git push. All right, we've pushed out. So this repository has nothing yet. If we refresh it, we should see content in it. So you see there is some content in it now. And you can see the type of languages that are used here: Java, JavaScript, and Docker files. And Docker files. Oh, Docker files are language. There's YAML as well. All right, so if we go into actions, you still should see that there is a deployment going on, guys. This is GitHub actions in action. There is a deployment going on. It's deploying to, it's a workflow that's running, right? You see the workflow. So if you click on it on actions, so this is how you get to it. Go to actions. You see GitHub actions trigger. That's the name I gave it, right, when I was doing this push. So you go to it and then you go to deploy. See, it's in progress. If I go to deploy, you should see the various stages that are running, right? So you see setup, this is the name it picks up. So let's scroll up as it's running. You see setup, checkout code. Checkout code is that first step. You see it's successful, guys. This is awesome. Checkout code, if you go, so want to be in a CI city. So the name is this, and then you see the checkout code. This is the first step, right? The checkout code, and this is checkout code here. Install kubectl. Install kubectl. You see install kubectl. This is the name. You see the various steps, guys. It names out the various steps for you. So all these things that are names here, you will see configure AWS credentials. You see configure AWS credentials. I know some of you have been seeing this and not knowing what it does. So you just, if you expand this, you see that it's doing the same thing that you wanted it to do, right? You wanted it to go pick up that function from wherever it's existing in the marketplace and run it. That's what it did. You wanted it to install kubectl. That's what it did. It installed kubectl. It went and copied kubectl from wherever using this thing and installed. Configure AWS credentials. It used your secret key, which you made as a secret. Remember the secret we passed, the secret access key and so on. And then the login. This is the next step. Remember that login that we passed in this file. This is the login right here. This is the next step, right? Remember, these are steps and not stages. Stages is in Jenkins. Just like that, you see build, tag, and push Docker image to Amazon ECR. This is it. It does all the builds. It builds from Node. It does this. You see, it runs all of these builds, copies the thing to the correct directory, which we gave it as user / something / app, right? And then it does that and it pushes the code to ECR using the tag that we gave it, a 1.1. So if it goes to ECR, you should be able to see a tag with that image, name, and everything. And then you see the kubectl, it went and changed it and used the correct context, which we named primuslearning. So it found an EKS cluster, guys. It found a cluster. And then you see deploy to EKS. It used It created the deployment using the deployment.yaml file, and it created a service with the service.yaml file that we gave it. And then once it did that, it logged in, cleaned up, and then you can see the post activities that it's doing here. And it's telling you your job is complete. Your job is complete. This is neat. It's giving you your first thing. Your job is complete. So any changes to the code, once you change and put, it automatically will trigger. And this is the automated CI/CD pipeline, a complete pipeline that is running. Now, if you go to ECR in AWS, right? There was no image. If you refresh now, you should see an image. Voila, there is an image, guys. And this is the tag to that image. You see the tag to that image? We gave it a tag, and this is the tag. It is like an application that we've built. This is the application. And remember the step we asked it to go in and create a service in ECR. Now you can begin to, a service rather in Kubernetes. Now you can begin to view your services running in Kubernetes. So if you want to see your services in Kubernetes, what do? kubectl. You use kubectl. Let me clear this thing off my screen here. You use kubectl. So if you do kubectl get port, it will get the number of ports that are running, right? It sees a port running. If you do kubectl get services or service, it will get the service that is running. And remember, there is a service that is running, and we asked it to use a load balancer because it was a service. And this is a DNS name. And we said this DNS name should be able to lead us to the application. So you can verify that the application is working by running this command right here. So this should be exposing, voila, our application is running, guys. And the environment in that file is called dev. The host container name, you see, remember we asked for a primuslearning node. This is the node it's running on, and hello from node. Remember the hello file that we passed in here in the servers.json file. You had a hello file, a hello node something. This is it right here. And this is exposing. All the beautiful page is just because of this file, because it's just using HTML and it's mixed with all the beautiful things. That is the page you're seeing here, guys. So this is the deployment. So there is nothing else that is difficult in this thing, guys, as simple as this. So you can begin to look at it. You can log into all of these things. If you know how Kubernetes work, you can even use K9s. I showed you how to use K9s in another video. So guys, please share this video for those who do not know how to use GitHub Actions to learn how to use them. These are very friendly. You see, they are very friendly. And now if we make a change, so if you change something in this image, in this code, for instance, if you change, let's make a change here, right? And run it right now. So if you change this from node to hello, from node to hello from Primus learning, right? This was awesome. And then we save this file. I believe I'm doing it in the right file. This should be the new. We save this file and do git status to see if the file is saved. Yes. Git add. We want to add all of that. And then git commit. We want to commit the change that we just did. -m. And then we want to commit the message new action. Git push, and we're pushing to what? We're pushing to main, because our push file says, this our workflow file here says you have to push to what? We have to push to main. We're pushing to main, or if somebody does a pull request and you're merging to main, and now a new run has to begin. You have to come back to actions. If you go back to actions, you discover that there's a new run that is happening. You see there's an action, a new action. This is the tag, the commit name that I gave it, right? The commit message, sorry, that I gave it. And you see it's running. and the various processes as well are running again. If you go into them, you see it's neatly running all the stages. It's creating, building the tag. It will push to Docker image. It will do that. You pull down all of these. You do all those steps, and it's successful. It's deployed, right? So the new changes are deployed, and there should be this container running again. So it will just take a moment, and we'll refresh. It will take a moment. Instead of hello from Node, the name should change in a bit, right? So it take a while as the new port gets deployed, right? So it should do a rolling update. We know of rolling updates. It should do a rolling update, and then the new port should be up and running very soon. This one is still, the age here is still 8 minutes, so I think it did this one earlier. So the new one should be up and running in a bit, guys. So and you will see the change. This change will appear here once everything is new. So let's go back here. Okay, so this one is on eksctl get deployment. All right, one is this. This is the age. It's still figuring out, so it will still run, and it will automatically change this right in a moment. So guys, this is it. I don't want to keep you waiting because of that. Once you do this, the next steps you need to do are the cleanup steps, right? So once this is run and you're comfortable, everything looks good according to what you did, you are ready to go to, you know, to delete. And to delete, remember, I think I put the delete command here to delete the cluster so that it doesn't consume. You simply need to run eksctl delete cluster. This is the delete command right here to clean up your environment. So to clean up the environment, just go to anywhere in your terminal that's configured to your environment and run that delete command, eksctl delete, then you give the cluster name, delete cluster, eksctl delete cluster dash name, that's the option, then your cluster name, and it should be deleting right away. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. Hope you loved the video. Please, if you did, share our video, subscribe to our channel, hit the notification button so that when new videos come up, you will be opportune to watch them as soon as possible. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.